I've been solid platinum blonde for the last, gosh, how old am I? Old, like 20 years, okay? And before my grandma died, she looked at me and she said, "Why do you do your hair that blonde? It washes you out." And as I was looking at my face and image on this screen, preparing to record this for you, I was like, oh, shoot, maybe she's right. The problem is, I don't know what color to do my hair. Can somebody give me some advice? Give me your thoughts and opinions, because I don't know. I've been this color a really long time. This case that we're doing today was dubbed the first internet murder. I know. This happened back in the 90s when AOL was at the height of its popularity, when the internet was just a lawless wasteland. Wasn't really a wasteland, but that sounded good together. Lawless wasteland. And nobody really knew which way was up. There were a lot of chat rooms happening. It was just like, it was new to everybody. And as there's a first for everything, there was bound to be a first internet murder. I'm Reagan Snyder, and this is the story of Sharee Miller. Sharee did not have an easy childhood. Her mom was married and divorced a bunch of times, and she had these men in and out of her life, and of course, in and out of Sharee's life because she's her daughter, right? And so it was just kind of, there was no real stability there. To make it way worse and way more devastating, Sharee said that when she was 3 or 4 years old, she was sexually abused. That's a baby. People who touch babies can go right to hell. So yeah, to say she had a difficult childhood is probably an understatement. And so she's trying to escape her life, basically. And when she's 17 years old, she decides she's going to get married. And so that's what she did. By the time she was 27 years old, she'd been married 2 times. She had 3 kids, and now she's single again. And as a single mom, she's trying to provide on every front for her kids, including financially. And so she's always picking up these different jobs. She worked at a nursing home at one point. Her kind of side hustle was Mary Kay. You remember Mary Kay makeup? I think it's still around, actually. And then she took on the bookkeeping for this scrapyard called B&D Auto. And B&D Auto was owned by this guy named Bruce Miller. Bruce was raised in Flint, Michigan. This is where they were. And after he graduated from high school, he kind of did what everybody did at the time, which was go work for General Motors because they were headquartered in Detroit. And anybody who knows Bruce knows that he loves cars. They just make him so happy. He's a big NASCAR guy. He loves Dale Earnhardt. And so to have this scrapyard just full of old cars and parts, this was like his playground. He was very, very happy there and very happy owning this place. And so in comes little Sharee Miller, and she sees Bruce. And he's 20 years older than her at this point. He's still 20 years older than her no matter what. And she looks at him and she's like, mama like. And so she went after him. And at first he wasn't really interested. She's young. She's in her 20s. She's got 3 kids. He's already done that song and dance. He had been married 2 times before. He's kind of in his empty nester phase. Like his kids are grown. He's been married a couple times. Just not real interested, right? He's got his scrapyard. That's all a guy needs. But Sharee, when she wanted something, she was going to go get it. And so she persisted and she went after Bruce and she kept poking until he gave in. So they start dating. And shortly after they started dating, she moves in with Bruce with her 3 kids, obviously, right? So now Bruce has 4 new people living in his house. And this is just kind of Sharee trying to survive, I think. She didn't have a ton of stability. And in turn, she didn't have that for her kids. It was just not a very stable situation for any of them. And so she's Like, well, I'm gonna move in with Bruce and everybody can come and we'll be a happy family. And Bruce was a good guy. He was described by people as a hardworking, good guy. He took a lot of pride in his business. He treated Sharee's kids like they were his own. It ended up being just kind of a whirlwind romance because 4 months after they started dating, the two of them set off to Vegas. And you know what happens in Vegas? Okay, a lot happens in Vegas. But they eloped. It was 1999. They'd been together 4 months and now they're married. And they get back to Michigan and they're just kind of settling in, to their life as newlyweds now. And Bruce worked a lot, right? And so Sharee kind of had a lot of downtime and she decided that she was going to go on a shopping spree with Bruce's credit cards. She racked his credit card debt up to $46,000. This was the 90s. That's a lot of money. And he had no idea. She's just doing it. No regrets, no remorse. Just, I want this, so I'm going to get it. And it was just kind of random things. They're supposed to be in their honeymoon phase. But Sharee was still interested in finding attention from other guys. She liked the attention. She sought it. She went after it. It was just kind of her thing. She wanted to feel like a sexy lady. This is where AOL enters. AOL, most of you probably know what it is. If you don't, it stood for America Online, and it was the most popular email service. There were chat rooms and instant messaging. It was unheard of. It was kind of the first of its kind. And I remember going on AOL and I didn't know the rules. There's one time I went in a chat room and I look back and I'm like, because I was a kid, and I'm like, what? How was I getting in these chat rooms? Where were my parents? But they didn't know. It was all new. How were they supposed to know? I was talking to somebody in a chat room and I was like, oh, they're a fun friend. And they asked for my address and I gave it to them because they were like, oh, maybe I'll write you letters. Luckily, nothing came of it. But my gosh, stupid. I was a stupid kid. My brain wasn't fully developed. And so the internet probably wasn't a good idea. So AOL, right? Sharee's got AOL. And chat rooms were very, very popular. And you could kind of scroll through the categories and join whichever one looked interesting to you. And you would go in and there'd just be a full chat log of just all these random usernames talking to strangers. It was kind of like the digital bar scene, except you could just meet strangers and be in your chonies with greasy gremlin hair. Nobody would know. It was great. So as I said, Bruce worked a lot. And so he was gone from the house a lot. He spent a lot of time at the scrapyard. And Sharee would sit at her little computer set up for hours and hours and hours talking to strangers and random people that she was meeting in these chat rooms. Obviously, she was after men, and it was all she just wanted to be sexy, and she wanted to let people know she was sexy, and she was down for a good time, if you know what I mean. And so her usernames were always something like, sexy kitten for you. It was like she had multiple, and they're all some variation of sexy. And it was the number 4, and then U, the letter U, because that's how we rolled back in the day with screen names. So one day, she's doing her thing. She's in one of these chat rooms, and she meets this guy named Jerry Cassaday. She and Jerry kind of started talking to each other in this chat room before they kind of decided to go somewhere a little more private, okay? And Jerry was, in his life, he was in a bit of a vulnerable state at this time. Jerry had grown up in Kansas City, Missouri, and he became a police officer. And while he worked at the department, he met this woman named Barbara, who was dispatcher for his department. And they fell in love and they got married. She had 2 kids from a previous marriage that she brought, and then he didn't have any kids yet, but they had one together. So they've got, I think it's 3 boys, their youngest that they had together. So Jerry's only son was named James. So things are going good. He's got his dream job. He's working up. He was promoted to lieutenant, and he had aspirations of becoming an FBI agent. So he's working up. He's got kids, marriage, doing the whole American dream thing, and things are great until they weren't. He was a homicide detective, and he was trying to become an FBI agent, but those plans got derailed. There was this whole drama within the department where Jerry had found something a little suspicious going on with his boss. He falsified some documents in this murder case, and Jerry's, like, what do? I gotta make the right choice here. I want to be moral and ethical about this. Like, I feel like I should tell somebody, but if I do that, everybody's going to shun me. So it was kind of this dilemma for him. And he ended up doing the right thing morally, I guess, and outing his boss. And this ultimately ended his career as a policeman. He was shunned. People were mad at him. He was demoted. The boss ended up losing his job over it. And so people were pissed off at Jerry. And he ended up having to just leave the department and not be a police officer anymore altogether and just find a new career path. And so he's devastated because this was his plan, his life plan. This is what he was doing. He was moving up, and now it was all gone. And his mom said that he was just never the same after that. He was just lost and kind of floating around trying to figure out what to do. He started drinking too much. He started dabbling in drugs. His marriage was falling apart. Things were just taking this nosedive into the ground for Jerry. He ended up getting a job at Harrah's, which I think had just opened in Kansas City, where he lived, as security. But he was miserable. It wasn't the same. He's just kind of getting by. And he's like, I just need a fresh start. And so he decides that he's going to move his family from Kansas City to Reno, Nevada. Beautiful Reno, Nevada. Have you been there? It's like a way more depressing version of Vegas. And if you live in Reno, I'm sorry. You know what you got out there. So he moves to Reno. Harris transferred him out there, and so he kept the same job. He's working out there, going about his business, still miserable. His alcoholism was not slowing down anytime soon. His marriage finally just hit a dead end. It was just over. And he had been promoted from security to a dealer, so I guess there's that. But other than that, like, his marriage is over. Barbara decides to move back to Kansas City. And then James, their son, his son with her, stayed with Jerry. And so it's just him and his son. He's single dadding it. He's working as a dealer at Harrah's and, dealing with alcoholism and all these terrible things to have to deal with. And on top of this, the depression and trouble with alcohol and the divorce, he's having financial troubles. And so he feels like his world's just kind of crumbling. So he was in a vulnerable state when he met Sharee, because this is about the time that they met in this chat room. So they're, chatting in the chat room, and they're like, let's take this somewhere a little more private. And so they moved their conversation to AIM. AIM. Did you call it AIM or AIM? I always called it AIM, but I think it stands for, what does it stand for? Is it like AOL Instant Messaging? I guess I never really knew. It's, like Messenger now on Facebook or whatever, but AOL's version, and it was awesome because this is back before we had phones that, texting. It was all T9 texting, which is very, very exhausting. It's very tedious. So to hop on your computer and see that your friends have been messaging you, it's just the best. I still remember the little chime. It was a good time. It was a good decade. So they spent hours and hours talking on AIM, being all flirty and getting all sexual with each other. Between their little sexual fantasies, Sharee told him that she was rich. And Jerry's like, score, because I'm not. I'm actually broke and I need money. And this woman, I think she likes me. He's like, yeah. So I own nursing homes and a junkyard. And I also have some lawsuit settlements that are pending. So yeah, I'm rich. Jerry's like, he felt like he had just met the woman of his dreams. And that light at the end of the tunnel, he saw it. It was there. And now he was there. He was at the light at the end of this tunnel. This woman was going to change his life. Bruce and Sharee have been married for 3 months. And Sharee goes and hops on a plane and flies all the way from Michigan to Reno, Nevada to meet Jerry in person. When she got there, she got into her best 90s fancy lady clothes, and she headed over to the casino to meet Jerry, where he was now a pit boss. Not that he needs to work because Sharee's rich. She goes and she sees him, and they kind of played it coy, like they don't know each other. And she played a game, and she's like giving him eyes, and he's like, They ended up spending the night together. Sharee, you're a newlywed. You're a married woman, and now you're sleeping with this guy in Reno? Girl, it's not good. She said that she was just attracted to the danger of it all. I don't know if she was just bored in her life, if she just hated herself. I don't know. It's like she was self-sabotaging. So yeah, she's taken on this whole, new dangerous role and going forth with it. And it's like this snowball that just keeps going and picking up momentum and going and building bigger and bigger. And you'll see why. Because what happens is insane. So they have this, another whirlwind meeting, and they have a great, sexy time together. But she has to go back to Michigan to her family. And so she goes, and they decide that they're going to continue their relationship online. Naturally, because that's what you do, because it's the 90s. And she took it up a notch. It went from all the sexy flirting and talk and stuff to Sharee taking very, very, not even suggestive, like full-blown sexy videos and then sending them to Jerry, which, because it's the 90s, it's not like, hey, let me take this with my phone and shoot a text. It's, all right, let me get my camera out, my 90s camera, and I'm going to record myself doing whatever. And then I'm going to transfer that over to this VHS tape. Then I'm going to get my Sharpie out and I'm going to label it so they know what it is and what's on it. And then I'm going to package it up in a manila envelope and spray a little perfume on it, put some red lipstick kisses all over it, write Jerry's address, and go drop it off at the post office. Jerry is going to love this in 3 to 5 business days. And Jerry, oh, did he love it? He really started looking forward to mail day, mail time after that. Mail time, mail time, mail time. So they're really just infatuated with each other. There's no real substance. It's all based on their chemistry. They just flirted and were all sexual, and that's all it was. But they changed their screen names, okay, because they're committed to each other. Their screen names were Jerry's Fool and Sharee's Fool. There are people who like that. This reminds me of this time back when I was dating. There was this guy that I was dating, and I really liked him. And I went into his contact on my phone, and I put a little heart next to his name. And it gave me the ick so bad that I went in 30 seconds later and deleted that heart. And so I don't know what it is, but I could never be somebody's fool on AOL and tell everybody about it through my username. But you know what? Good for them. After they met, Sharee logs on to AOL to chat with her mans, and she has some big news for him. She's pregnant, and it is his baby. And Jerry is so ecstatic. He has a son already. He cannot wait to be a dad again to another baby. It's just the best news ever. But as time went on, Sharee started to open up to him a little bit about what was going on in her life and what her home life was like and what she had been enduring. It turns out that Bruce was very abusive to her. And so she's telling Jerry all about this, that he hits her, he's physically violent. And ultimately, it ended up in Bruce beating her so bad. And I don't think I'm allowed to say RAPE, but he did that to her. And it was all so violent that she ended up losing the baby. And Jerry's devastated. And he's like, how can I be there for you? He wants to be that safe place for Sharee to land so that she doesn't have to go through this alone, even though there's that distance there. They continue their relationship. They're both sad about the loss of this pregnancy, and they continue their relationship online. And Sharee flies out there to see him any opportunity she gets to go to Reno. She'll go see Jerry and spend time. And that's kind of how their relationship was going for a while. And because, she's got little kids at home, Bruce works a lot. She can't leave them with him. So she would take the kids to stay with her in-laws, which were Bruce's brother, Chuck, and his wife, Judy. And she was going so much that they're like, what's in Reno? Why do you go out there so much? And she's like, oh, it's Mary Kay stuff. You wouldn't get it, Judy. So they're like, okay, I respect the hustle. You get it, girl. And this affair, nobody knew about this affair in Michigan. None of her friends, nobody. It's just like their little secret. And every time she went to Reno, it kind of cemented their relationship a little bit more. It was a very intense relationship. They're infatuated with each other, right? They decide that it's time to start making plans together. Sharee had been pregnant by this man after all, and even though she lost this baby, she loves him and she wants to be with him and vice versa. And so they're like, all right, we're gonna make some plans. Sharee kept up with those VHSs in the mail, and she sent him one of just kind of this nice looking domestic situation. She's got this nice house and she's filming her kids playing out in the yard and kind of to just kind of illustrate for Jerry that this could be our life. This is what it's going to be like, baby. You're going to come join us. We're going to all be together. It's going to be happily ever after. And Jerry was into it. He was so in love with this woman. He was so happy. He really felt like things had turned around for him. But then one day he sits down at his computer, excited to talk to his woman, and he opens up his email to find one from Bruce. And Bruce, in so many words, told him that he knew about the affair. And so Jerry's like, oh crap. And he goes to talk to Sharee about it. Sorry, I misspoke. So it was after Jerry got this email from Bruce and he goes to talk to Sharee about it. And she's like, I know, he found out about the pregnancy and he beat me and I lost the baby and I'm so sorry. And so, he's devastated about this. And to show him proof of this, I guess, and the severity of the beating, she sends Jerry a picture with bruises covering her body, including her stomach. Jerry's like, he's mad, he's devastated, he's got all these emotions. And he's like, Sharee, enough is enough. You need to leave this man. You need to take your kids and leave him and come be with me. But it wasn't that easy because Bruce was in the mafia. And Sharee is like, if I try to leave, they're going to kill me. I'm stuck. Like, this is just my life. It's going to be like this. I don't know what to do. There was nothing Jerry could really do. So they continued their relationship as it had been, online, brief visits, sporadically. And after some time, this really started to affect Jerry's mental well-being. It was a roller coaster because whenever Sharee was there with him, he was ecstatic, over the moon, on cloud nine, so happy. But then there was that looming dark cloud of knowing that Sharee was going to have to go home. And when it came time for her to go home, he went back into the depths of despair and was sad and depressed all over again. And Jerry's drinking problem, it's still ongoing at this point. And there was one night that he got so drunk before work that he showed up, something happened, he got belligerent, security had to escort him out. And I think he like slammed a door really hard and it hit one of the security guards. And so they called police and then he was arrested. It was this whole thing. He really felt like he was at rock bottom, or so he thought. During this time, after this whole thing transpired, his family kind of rallied around him and they're like, Jerry, buddy, you're not doing good. Why don't you come back to Missouri? And he's like, I think that's a good idea. So he and James went back to Missouri to be by family and just try to kind of repair his life. He started going to AA. He went back to church. He felt like things were starting to turn around a bit for him. He was still in contact with Sharee. They're still in this relationship. And his family recalled him taking his laptop everywhere. And it wasn't wireless internet. So he'd have the cords, to plug into the dial up. And he just couldn't stand to not talk to Sharee all the time. After his move back to Kansas City, he gets really great, fantastic news from Sharee. She's pregnant again with his babies. It's twins. He's just so happy about this. Like, oh my gosh, yay. Everything's great again. And Sharee is trying, because they're long distance, Sharee's trying to keep him posted about everything. And so she's taking pictures of her growing belly and sending them over to Jerry, and she's, all the sonograms she's sent off to Jerry so that he could be part of it. But then our boy Bruce shows up into his inbox again. And this time he threatens to Jerry that he's going to end the pregnancy. And he said that he'll, quote, get rid of the bastards in her belly. And so obviously Jerry's upset by this because this happened before. Why wouldn't he do it again? And sadly, that's what happened. She lost her pregnancy again. And this time it was Bruce's mafia friends. He told them to gang rape her and beat her, and it resulted in another miscarriage. And so Jerry's devastated, of course, but now he's mad and he's ready to do something about Bruce. He hated him. I mean, this guy was beating the woman he loves. He had killed 3 of his babies. He's just this awful person. And Sharee stuck with him. Something's got to give. So through instant messenger, Jerry and Sharee decide that they are going to kill Bruce. And they plotted the whole thing out for weeks. They took their time plotting every detail on how they were going to get rid of Bruce. And on November 8th of 1999, so I mean, this is all very quick because they got married in April and now they're going to murder Bruce. So what is that, like 6-7 months? So November 8th, 1999, Jerry got in his car and drove 800 miles from his house in Missouri. There's a lot of M states. Missouri, Michigan, Minnesota. From Missouri to Michigan, and he was driving to meet Sharee at this truck stop so that they could confirm plans. She gave him a cell phone, and from there he waited for the cell phone to ring one time, which was the signal that Sharee made sure that Bruce was alone at work at the scrapyard. And so he gets that call. He drives over to the scrapyard, gets out of his car, walks in. Bruce is standing there. He's alone. He takes his gun and he shoots Bruce right in the throat and in the chest. And he ran back to his car, left, headed back to Kansas City, called Sharee on her landline, let it ring one time and hung up so that she knew Bruce was dead and Jerry was on his way back home to Missouri. Sharee orchestrated the whole thing all the way down to who would find him. She gets the call, she knows it's done, and then she goes to the next step of the plan, which is to call her in-laws, Chuck and Judy, and say, hey, I'm really concerned about Bruce. We were supposed to eat at this time. He's not home. I can't get a hold of him. Could you guys go check on him? And they're like, yeah, they're concerned too. I guess if Sharee's saying something's wrong, they better go. So they drive down to the junkyard, and when they get there, they find Bruce laying on the floor face down in a pool of blood. So they call 911 immediately. Police come out, and they really can't find any evidence. There were no fingerprints. There were no footprints. There was just kind of nothing. And so they're like, who did that? Who could have done this? We don't really have any suspects off the top of our head. So one of the officers, or 2 of them probably, were tasked with giving the news to Sharee that her husband was dead. So they drive over to the Miller residence and they broke the news, and Sharee crumbled. She fell to the floor. She's sobbing and wailing and just an absolute mess. It sounds like she was a pretty good actress. After she calmed down a little bit, the officers asked her if there's anybody off the top of her head that she knew of that would do this, that wanted Bruce dead. And she was like, actually, yeah. She pointed the finger at John Hutchinson. John Hutchinson worked at B&D Auto with Bruce, and they were very, very good friends. But according to Sharee, John had a motive to kill Bruce. Apparently, after John's divorce, him and Sharee had a little fling, and they slept together a couple times before she got with Bruce. And John had actually warned Bruce about Sharee, but Bruce just kind of brushed it off, like, oh, it's fine. I can take care of myself. Don't worry about it, kind of thing. John had also borrowed $2,000 from Bruce, and Sharee claims that it was a source of contention between the 2 of them. It's like, yeah, I think it was probably John. And for a while, John was the number 1 suspect in Bruce's murder case. And their focus on him increased after they talked to old Harold, John's brother, Harold. Harold told them this story about how John said that he wanted Bruce dead because he didn't want to pay the money back. And John's like, I don't know where that came from. I don't know why he told investigators that story, but Harold's also not all there. He's a little crazy. So I guess that sums that up. I don't know, because John didn't do it. As we know, it was Sharee and Jerry. But police don't know this. They think it's John. So they show up to his house and they're searching the property and flipping the whole place upside down. They're questioning him, confiscating his guns. I mean, this poor guy was in the spotlight in the worst ways. And of course, he's denying any involvement, but police are like, yeah, we hear this all the time from suspects, and we know it was you. They were certain he did it. And on top of that, to make it look even worse, John did a polygraph test, and the first one was inconclusive, so he took another one and he failed it. So I've heard that it's not great to take polygraph tests because I don't think they're admissible in court, but they kind of paint a narrative and it can go against you, you know? So it's not looking good for John. So police are certain it's John, but there's nothing that they can arrest him for. There's nothing solid enough that they can actually arrest him for. And so the investigation kind of came to a standstill a little bit. And Sharee didn't like this. She was mad at the police. She stormed into the department. She's like, "What are you doing to find out who killed my husband? I want this case wrapped up." Like, she owns the place 800 miles away in Odessa, Missouri, which Jerry, that's where he was living. He was getting the cold shoulder from Sharee. She essentially wrote him off after he killed Bruce for her, defending her honor. In fact, she had a new live-in boyfriend just 2 weeks after Bruce's murder. And Jerry, who we know is already emotionally fraught, just spiraled. He just went down to this dark place. He was in this deep, 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 deep depression because not only had he killed a man, the woman he loved and killed for had written him off and was ignoring him and was in a relationship with this new guy. She pretty much ghosted him. And so he's kind of left hanging there high and dry. You don't do that to people you love. You keep them low and wet. Ultimately, Jerry took his own life. He put a gun in his mouth and pulled the trigger. And he was found he was like in this recliner, and he had a Bible on his lap that was opened up to a certain verse talking about murdering. It looked like what his family gathered was he was making peace with God before he died. His brother Mike was tasked with cleaning out Jerry's apartment, and he remembered that Jerry told him if anything happened to him, there's a briefcase under his bed and that he needed to be the one to find it and get to it before anybody else did. And so as he's cleaning out the apartment, he looks under Jerry's bed, and sure enough, there's a briefcase, and it has 3 envelopes attached to the front of it and a note that said, "Do not open alone, contact John O'Connor." John O'Connor was an attorney, and so he contacted him. But before they could open it, they had to have the bomb squad come in because they're like, we don't know what could be in this here briefcase. It could be deadly. So the bomb squad came in, and once they verified that there was no bomb, there was no physical threat, it was okay to open this briefcase, Jerry's family gathered in John O'Connor's office to go through this briefcase and find out what was in it. And what they found in this briefcase would be the biggest real-life plot twist of their lives. One of the envelopes on the front of the briefcase had a suicide note in it for his mom. And in it, he wrote that he realized Sharee lied about everything through their whole relationship. Bruce, as it turns out, was not part of the mafia. He didn't beat her. He wasn't abusive at all. In fact, he wasn't even a little bit violent. He was actually really mellow and chill, and he was a good guy. Everybody who knew him said he was a good guy. Sharee had never been pregnant. She faked 2 pregnancies. The sonograms were fake. The pictures of her belly were fake. She just pushed out her belly to take the picture of her growing belly, and that, of course, Jerry was going to see a pregnancy in it because that's what he wanted to see. The picture of the bruises was fake. That was all done with makeup. And the emails that Jerry was getting from Bruce, the threatening emails, that was Sharee. She made a fake account that looked like Bruce and was sending these threatening emails just to kind of further push this narrative on Jerry so that he'd get mad enough to kill Bruce. He also confessed in this letter that he was the one who went to Flint, Michigan, and killed Bruce. And when they opened up the briefcase, there were mountains and mountains of evidence implicating Sharee in Bruce's murder. He had records of flights, hotel room receipts, emails, their chat logs. And so it's like, he's got the receipts of all these. It's kind of like Sharee's screwed. And in those chat logs, obviously, were all the details of Bruce's murder that they talked about. It laid out the whole thing. And so detectives are like, oh my gosh, get Sharee on the horn. We got to get her in. So they're interviewing Sharee and they're questioning her and they're like, well, what about this? What about this? And she's denying everything. She's like, I didn't do that. You know, you can fake an email. You could change it. You could fake that. I didn't write that. Of course she denied everything. She truly believed in that black soul of hers that she could talk her way out of anything. But they had enough to arrest her, so she was arrested. During her trial, her defense team claimed that this is all just because Jerry was a jilted lover, and he wanted to do this so that he could get back at Sharee and make it and frame her. You know, it was all out of spite. And to Sharee, this whole thing, it was all just like this fantasy to her. It was like a game. But on December 22nd of 2000, she was found guilty of second-degree murder and conspiracy to commit first-degree murder. She was sentenced to life without parole. But in 2009, it was determined that Jerry's suicide note was not admissible in court, and they had used it during a trial, and so she posted bail and she was released, and that was that. But prosecutors were not going to let her slide. She needed to pay for what she did. So for 3 years, they fought to get the conviction reinstated, and in 2012, they finally did. She was sent back to prison. Take off those fancy 90s clothes, girl, because you're going to jail. And for years and years, Sharee maintained her innocence. She's like, I'm innocent. I didn't do anything wrong. But then in 2016, something changed in her, and she decided that she wanted to take responsibility for what she did. So she sits down and she types up this 4-page letter to send to the judge and the prosecutors to admit her guilt. She told them that she maintained her innocence for so many years because that was easier than being truthful with herself. She wanted to lie to herself so that she could look in the mirror and wake up and get out of bed in the morning. But according to her, she wanted to do something right before she left this world. And so she decided to come clean and admit everything that everybody already knew. But if Bruce wasn't this bad guy that was all lies, she made all of that up, what was her motive? Why did she want him dead? Why did she even marry him in the first place, right? In her interview for 2020 with Gigi Chang, she asked this question. She had all the good questions, and Sharee answered them all. And she said she wished that she could say her motive was money because that would be better than what it was actually for. But it was just because Bruce was really close to figuring her out and knowing who she was inside and knowing what she was all about. She killed him instead of facing the truth. She said that she believes she should be in jail for the rest of her life. She deserves that. These men don't get to live out their lives, so why should she? Blah, blah, blah. She recorded a message to apologize to the victims' loved ones, their family. And the families listened to him. They're like, yeah, I'd like to hear what she has to say. And none of them could say, oh, yeah, that's nice of her, but, I don't know if I can forgive her yet. It was across the board. I don't believe her. She was so manipulative to everybody all the time. She was so known to be so manipulative that even though she sounded sincere in those apologies, nobody believed her. You cried wolf too many times, Sharee. So because the selfish acts of this woman, because she liked to use men and manipulate them all for the sense of her entertainment, 2 people are dead. And lots of people will be in mourning for the rest of their lives. What are your thoughts on this case? I'd love to hear them in the comments. Thank you for being here. Take care of yourself. Tell me what color I should dye my hair. And I'll see you next time. Bye.